Let's meet someone who was a former political advisor turned entrepreneur and podcast host. I'm Kate Save. The Inspired CEO starts now. Welcome to The Inspired CEO, where each episode we explore the innovative wellness practices that are driving success and longevity in the modern business world. In this episode, we chat with Amanda Delosa, a former political media advisor who reinvented herself as an entrepreneur, business owner, and now host of Next Season podcast. Amanda built a thriving PR agency before motherhood turned her world upside down, sparking an identity crisis and ultimately a powerful journey into reinvention. Today she speaks with a refreshing honesty about her ambition, resilience, and navigating the messy transitions we all face, helping women step confidently into their next season of life and business. Welcome, Amanda.
Thanks for having me.
My pleasure. Now, you've had a tumultuous journey, and a lot of people might see what you do now and you appear like a really successful entrepreneur, but an extrovert. However, I know your childhood didn't start off just like that. Tell us a bit about growing up.
I think the childhood is a really good place to start because I guess that's what kind of turned me into the person that I am today and inspired a lot of the choices that I made throughout my career. So to not go into it too deeply, but to say that childhood trauma essentially programs us and gives us patterns that we play out later on in life. So as a kid, I was always looking for love, for attention. I was always thinking if I wasn't perfect, that I would be abandoned or I would be rejected. The abuse that I faced throughout my childhood ultimately led me to be someone who became hyper independent.
Yes.
I would feel good about myself and get the validation that I was seeking, which I wasn't getting from love or, that normal connection, emotional resilience, I guess, from your parents through work. So as a young person, I essentially wasn't allowed to really have a voice. I wasn't taught what boundaries were. I didn't actually even understand that concept until my mid-30s.
So you were raising very early too, didn't you?
15. Yeah. Just 2 weeks shy of my 17th birthday. Again, it's the whole hyper independence thing. I couldn't stay there any longer. I just felt so unvalued. But in the workforce, I felt really alive. Like I felt valued. My first job, I actually lied about my age. At 13, I wasn't quite 14, 9 months.
Yeah.
And I started working in a pharmacy, which I really loved because I worked with a lot of mature people. I was pretty much the only junior there at the time. And I found it to be like a real kick to kind of rise up the ranks through the pharmacy stores. So you go from like being the checkout chick through to working in the vitamin section, starting to learn a lot about nutrition, across to cosmetics and learning about makeup and beauty, which I've always loved as well. And then up the very back of the pharmacy store was the dispensary, That was like the ultimate, like if you were able to go and work in the dispensary with the pharmacist essentially, processing the scripts, that felt like kind of a big deal.
Yeah.
So that was the job that I worked at every Thursday evening and every weekend since I was 13 years old, right through to finishing high school. I worked at a couple of different pharmacies throughout that time.
Yeah.
And I was always looking for the next opportunity to break away from the family home and be able to go and set myself up. So I remember all the way back when I was about 14 or 15, thinking of applying for the military police and the army and going and studying in the army. At the time, I had a strong desire to be in the police. Actually, in my Year 12 end of year book,
yes,
I said that I wanted to be a forensic psychologist. I think I just watched too much NCIS and Law and Order at the time, so that's where that inspiration come from. But I wasn't afforded the privilege that a lot of kids have if they can stay at home and go on to university and have their parents sort of support them through that. Because I moved out of home at 16, I was straight into needing to afford a car, needing to, have rent and dealing with housemates because I couldn't afford it on my own, And my wage back then would have been lucky to be $500 a week.
Yeah.
To support a person on $500 a week was really tough. So I had to work full time. So I ended up doing a bunch of different things, which I've always done. I've always sort of just gone wherever I
Yes.
sort of said the next
Yes.
opportunity. But I did an administration traineeship to start with at a wedding facility that brought Japanese people to the Gold Coast for weddings. So I spent 12 months there, and then I saw an opportunity to do another traineeship, but in real estate. I also had an interest in real estate. You know, I came from a family that bought and sold a lot of property. They made most of their wealth doing that. So yeah, I thought, and it, you know, it's kind of, you know, when you're young, like real estate looks like a pretty prestigious kind of role, and particularly in this day and age when you've got all the selling Miami Sunset TV shows, like it can be seen as quite glamorous. But again, starting out from the bottom, on a reception,
vessels, and
but throughout that real estate career, I went from being the receptionist to working the property management to going into sales to eventually being someone who was employed to start a new, like to lead up a new agency from scratch and set up all of the departments, to the point where I was pretty much running an agency all by myself before I left the business. This was 19, 20, 21, going to 22.
That's incredible to think at such a young age, even going back to moving out just before your 17th birthday. If you're by yourself, you're running a household. It's not just about being able to afford to buy a car. You're looking after all of your own health, your bills, everything. It's incredible. And you had younger siblings that you were helping out as well.
Yeah, I mean, there was a period where I was estranged from my family for the first 6 months of moving out from home. I didn't hear from anyone, not one person, to the welfare check to make sure I was okay. But we did obviously reunite, and I love my brother and sister to death. And I essentially did, you know, help raise them with my father while they were younger. But yeah, there's like this scrappiness, this like, you just take me right back to that, you know, the whole portfolio of my career. And I think people would look at where I am now today, and I think a lot of people have the perception that, you know, I come from a place of privilege.
Yeah.
But I've literally had jobs where I worked at Thrifty Car Rental, and I used to drive around one-ton trucks. Yes, it would take days. And, you know, I worked in as a checkout chick and, like, you know, a bunch of different things in retail, you name it. Like, it was just like whatever I could do to survive at the time, I did it. So I have absolutely no aversity to any kind of, you know, hard work, any kind of industry. And it's really shaped who I am today. Because obviously I ended up in real estate, but then, and this is where the story takes a bit of a interesting twist, is my brother and I actually won
the butt competition, the best butts. You went to the world championships.
I just read from a nutrition background, but I'd put on a little bit of weight at the time, and I was walking through my local shopping centre and I saw this sign out the front of Kmart, because it was run by Triumph International and they sell all of the lingerie in there. And it said, "Do you think you have Australia's best bum?" And I thought, you know what? People tell me all the time I have a pretty good bum. Maybe I'll enter this competition, and that can be my motivation to actually get in shape. So fast forward, we win. We're off to Paris. We're at International Best Bum competition. We're on the catwalk, full choreographed show.
With your brother?
With my brother. Yep.
So good.
Doing press tours, you know, we're on Sunrise, like all sorts of stuff. And it was on, I was 24 then. And so that was the first time I traveled internationally as an adult. And on the way back, I just felt so determined to change my life. I just wanted to come back and do something different. And on the plane, I was actually like, oh gosh, I love travel so much, just like everyone does.
Yeah.
I'd love to be a host on Getaway.
Oh, yeah, right.
So I got back and I enrolled in a Bachelor of Communications in Journalism and Public Relations. While still working full time, I managed to attend university and work. And 6 months out from finishing my degree, I, by chance, had met a local federal politician at my surf club, because one of the things that I've always done is say yes to everything, and I'm always wanting to help people out. So whilst I was juggling all of this, I was also a volunteer surfer lifesaver at the Palm Beach Surf Club.
Yes.
And I took on extracurricular activities and roles, including being the secretary, the training officer. So I'd actually train the families and their children for the bronze medallion, senior first aid, everything. Like, I was the teacher. I taught them all through the certification of Surf Life Saving Queensland. And I was also the publicity officer and the fundraising champion.
My goodness.
So when I'm at this awards night and I get seated next to the federal politician and she hears of this, you know, resume that I've built, she invites me for an interview. And this is 6 months before I'd finished university.
Yeah.
But I figured, why not? Like, jump the gun.
Yeah.
I've done this before. I've managed full-time employment and doing my studies. So I went for the interview, I landed the job, and I finished the rest of my degree online over the next 12 months. And my first week in federal politics was literally baptism by fire, being thrown into Canberra into budget week.
No.
And so my role was actually to be in the Canberra office as a media advisor every single time Parliament sat. So I spent 22 weeks a year in Canberra. I would do 44, maybe more if we had to do double, you know, flights and that sort of thing, traveling back and forth.
Paris, Canberra.
I know.
I get it. I'm saying it. Amazing. And so then you started your own PR company.
Yeah, my heart was never really in politics. Like, it was a good opportunity. I jumped at it, and gosh, I got some really good connections, and that really set me up in my business because the background I had was so different to a lot of people in PR. There's only a few other operators I know that have got the political communication skills. And some of the businesses and clients that I had needed help with things like lobbying and understanding how, procurement and getting into government kind of worked. And I found that a lot of the things that I was doing to basically amplify the brands of politicians at the time, business owners could really use. Because I would go out, you see on the news when the Prime Minister or the ministers go and visit different workplaces and they've got the hat on and the high-vis vest. So I would actually coordinate those media calls and I would go out. And so I'd be talking to business and I'm hear their stories. And I'm like, man, like, you've got some really good news here. Like, you should be doing this on social. You should be, contacting your local media. You should be putting out press releases. And so I found myself kind of just from love and on the side, just like coaching, which I could have done in that role anyway, because the role of, like a federal office or even any kind of constituency office in politics is to support the community.
Yes.
So I just found myself out of love just doing this work sort of to help kind of encourage business owners to have more of a say publicly about who they are and their stories. And I really loved it. So, after feeling, and this is the thing, I think for me, it's like when I start to feel really unappreciated and even disrespected in a role, because I know, like, I work so hard, like I wear my heart on my sleeve and I always do my best. Like, I put everything into my work. That kind of started to happen. Well, it did happen, not kind of, but it did happen. Was the last member that I worked for who was a new member, who, again, like, I pretty much taught him the ropes of his job. And so, I thought, well, I've had enough of this. People have been saying to me for years, I've got, this great entrepreneurial streak that I need to flex. Because I did, prior to university, one of the things I was doing actually was I had a lash extension business. My first business is actually doing my lash extension.
That's pretty early on.
That was 2010. So I actually learned how to do, the mink eyelashes. Wow. So I actually learned how to do those. No one else was doing them. So I was based on the Gold Coast. I had clients from the Sunshine Coast, a 2-hour drive coming down to see me. I would fill 10-hour days back to back with slots. Like, it was a lucrative little hustle. And one of the first things I did with that was, do you remember Spreets? It was like a discount coupon platform where you could offer deals.
Like gift coupons and all of that.
So I put a package up on there too when I was first starting the business and sold over 250 vouchers. So as you can imagine, I was booked solid back to back, just seeing clients all the time. So that's actually also what I walked away from to go into politics as well. So it kind of was like full circle coming back to entrepreneurship. And my plan was I would contract for a little while for a good friend of mine who had gone out on her own too. We actually knew each other from politics. She worked for the local mayor. And so I worked with her for a little bit. My strategy was to save up what I called an oh shit fund, which is 3 months of mortgage repayments, because I owned my own home at the time too. And just have a buffer. And I just thought, look, if I can't make this work within 3 months, then I'll just go back to work. Like, I've never had any issue, as I said before, finding work, because I'll do anything. I survived the first 3 months. Then my goal was to replace my income in my first year, which I did. And then the goal thereafter was to double that every year, which I was on target for every single year. And so by the time I'm sort of reaching, I guess, that corner of the full potential of my agency really exploding, I've got 5 full-time employees. I've got my own office. I've got some really good high-profile clients in Queensland. Based in Queensland on the Gold Coast. I was poaching former Channel 9 journalists to come work with me, all sorts of things. So, it was really building. And then I was asked to host the Young Entrepreneur of the Year Awards with Business News Australia. Camilla, who is the founder and chief editor of Business News, is a really good friend of mine. I've done a lot of work with her over the years. And she asked, who do you want your co-host to be? And I just thought, why not Jack Delosa? Because I hadn't met him yet in real life. I'd followed him online for, since 2014. It was someone I looked up to from a motivational perspective with business and I guess the unconventional way of life that I was living, but we hadn't yet met. And so he agreed and we met on that night and I guess the rest is history.
Wow.
And, like a few months later, we reconnected. And then a few months after that, we, found out we were kind of pregnant with Ariella and moving in together and fallen madly, deeply in love with each other. And I moved to Sydney at that time as well. And
that's, you found out you were pregnant at about that time, is that right?
It's the timeline is very squished.
Yeah.
So we were Jack was living in Melbourne, I was living in the Gold Coast when we were seeing each other. So there's a lot of travel to and from to sort of get to each other. I was at a point where I was actually looking for the next place that I was going to live on the Gold Coast. So I was actually applying for rental properties, and Jack was wanting to move back into Sydney, and, you know, he just suggested at the time, like, why don't we just move in together? And I'm like, why not? Because we had so much alignment. You know, we'd had the conversations. Like, we knew that our, you know, futures tied in together so well, and that if anyone could make it work, it would be us two. And if we couldn't make it work, then everyone else is screwed.
Yeah. And you're both fiercely independent, so you'd respect each other's independence rather than the dominance of one partner, which often happens.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing. Like, the dynamic when we came together as individual, like, I guess, CEOs of our own companies versus then what happened is all part of that identity crisis that you were talking about in the intro, right? Because once I moved to Sydney and I was pregnant, I had no idea what my pregnancy was going to be like. I had staff that didn't want to move interstate. I had staff that didn't want to work remote. So I lost, you know,
really talent.
60% of my talent the minute I moved to Sydney.
Yeah.
And I just, the desire and I guess the motivation that I had to continue scaling Yellow Panda at that time, it started to diminish because I had no idea if I wanted to continue being this boss lady or if I wanted to actually be a mom.
Yeah.
Like, I needed to actually feel into that. I can't make decisions until I've actually experienced it and dipped my toes in the water of whatever it is. Yeah. So I kind of just, you know, continued to work with the clients that I had, and if any exciting ones came on board, obviously I jumped at that. That's interesting, actually. There's a little anecdote with that one. So 2 weeks out from having my C-section, I was approached by the team of Simon Beard, who is the founder of Culture Kings, who is 100 mil, wanting a personal brand strategy.
Oh, wow.
Big job.
2 weeks before a C-section.
Yeah.
Huh.
And then some follow-on work in terms of some coaching and great content and that sort of thing. I could not refuse it. Like, I was like, yeah, bring it on, Jack, because it's just such a good opportunity, something to have, obviously, you know, on your sort of resume of clients that you've worked with, particularly high-profile clients. So, yeah, I mean, like, I was working up until 8 p.m. the night before my C-section. C-section was the next day at 4 a.m. And around the time too, I had another really good client, Midnight Health, who were recently bought out by NIB, but at the time they were actually partners. So I was handling a lot of the press announcements for different funding rounds that they were going for. We're talking multiple $1 million funding rounds and getting coverage across the AFR and Oz and all that sort of thing. So they were a very important client to me that I wanted to continue working with. So I just said to them, look, I'll be off for 2 weeks, but I'll be back. So I took the first
2 weeks. Oh, I hear you. I've done exactly the same thing. But tell me then, once you've had the baby, Ariella, how did your mindset change? What, that moment that you've got the baby in your arms and you look down and you realize it's a little mini you.
Yeah.
What's going on?
I guess the first thing would be like, what was the conversation we had around like what would happen? I mean, obviously, look, well, to go back to that, because there is a story with that. The minute they put her in my arms, because obviously she went off with Jack to start with, and you're laying there and you're just like, where's your hero? But you just, you know, where's my baby? And it feels like forever, but it's like a few minutes, like 7 minutes or something that you're waiting for immunization, cord cutting, that sort of thing. And literally the minute she was put on my chest and I held her, and Jack was next to me, I just looked at him and said, I want another one.
Oh my God, yes. Crazy. That is beautiful, though. You just knew that was it. That was your purpose. Yeah. And then going that next year working and balancing being a mother to Ariella and wife, partner, fiance?
We actually weren't engaged yet. We did everything backwards. That's another
there we go. Ours to Jack. What did that feel like for you? Because your life just prior to that was the complete opposite. You were so independent, doing everything yourself, running 100 miles an hour. And then all of a sudden you had to be a little bit more still because you've got this baby that's fully dependent.
I couldn't actually name the feeling at the time. I just knew like I pregnancy hormones, new birth hormones, postpartum. I suffered a lot with postpartum anxiety and depression. So I would often just sit there going like, why do I feel like this? I couldn't actually name why I felt it. I was so grateful for Ariella and Jack and feeling so much love and so happy, but then also like crying all the time. So this is the whole thing. You know, it took me some time to work through this to actually figure out what had happened to me. And it was just such a massive identity crisis and so much change at once. You know, I'd be talking to different therapists and coaches about my journey, and they'd be like, you know, like it's a big thing just to even move interstate, like relocating after being in the one place for 30 years and leaving all behind all your friends and family. New partner. New mother. And then essentially, you know, like the career or the business thing also kind of, which is something that really propped me up. Like it gave me so much like strength and validation as a human. Like that was like what I was known as. It was only when I really started to look at all these things, I was like, oh, that's what's going on.
You've taken on a lot. So then you start the Next Season podcast to help other women that are going through these feelings that they can't explain. Tell me, what do you plan to do with this, and how are you going to, I guess, change the way that, or help women that are going through this so that they actually can identify what's going on?
It's just one conversation at a time at this stage, and it's obviously growing the audience and making sure I can reach people who need to hear what we're talking about, because this is what I needed, this project. So for a long time, being in branding, being in PR, I've always been like, oh, I need to have a podcast. I should have a podcast. But I could never actually put my finger on exactly what I would want it to be in terms of the niche. Going through this period actually gave me probably the biggest passion project of my life as a result of it. The conversations on the show are everything that I needed to hear to help me through. And even just like after launching episode 1, the amount of women who reached out with similar stories, connecting with me. And for someone who had felt quite lonely and isolated for a long time, I was like, wow, this is the thing I love most about the podcast. It's the community, and it's actually connecting with other like-minded women going through similar things. Like I'd miss that the most. I remember saying to Jack, because I should have started a lot earlier, as with everything, always.
Well, I'm so glad that you found that, because there isn't a mother on the planet that doesn't experience that. Everyone experiences it. Most people don't talk about it, and having those conversations really helps people. So is there one last thing that I guess that you're looking to do in the next few years? I've heard there's some plans with you and Jack perhaps moving. What's next?
Yeah, we've always had our sort of hearts set on living in the US, independent of even being together. It's something that both of us have always sort of dreamed of one day. It feels expansive for both of us. So I guess watch this space and see what comes of that. But, you know, that would be, the next big adventure on the horizon for us.
Amazing. So if people want to learn more, how do they follow you? Where do they go?
Instagram's where I hang out the most. So that's at Amanda Panda Delosa.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Amanda. This is the Inspired CEO, and we'll be right back.